Good afternoon, good evening, Alabama, Tuscaloosa, West Alabama, Internet world. Welcome in. This is the Joe Gaither Show right here on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. I am Joe Gaither. You are the listener, the viewer. We appreciate you guys so much. You can check us out on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. You can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and on Amazon. We appreciate each and every one of you guys. Follow us on the program at Joe Gaither6 on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, at Joe Gaither6. Send us your comments, your questions, your queries, and complaints as we get the day rolling, the evening rolling. We did a little morning show yesterday. We're doing an evening show today. We're jumping all around. Tomorrow, we will be back on our normal time slot for 1 p.m., and going to just keep things rolling with a great week right here on the Joe Gaither Show. It's big time Mississippi State week. And we're going to talk about it in Mississippi State, but we're going to talk about Alabama basketball as well as huge news in the Alabama basketball world. We're going to talk about Greg Byrne as well. We're going to talk about Dylan Lonergan, but mostly we're going to talk about Alabama football, of course. The kings of the Tuscaloosa world. Kings of really the Alabama sports scene, the Alabama Crimson Tide. So we had a big week, or big day, excuse me. It felt like a whole week yesterday, but we had a big day yesterday on campus watching Alabama basketball's open practice, the last part of their practice. And we heard from head coach Nate Oats. We heard from Ryland Griffin. We heard from Mark Sears as well. Yesterday in the Naylor Stone Media Room, we actually got to stick around in the Naylor Stone Media Room and hear from head football coach Nick Saban, and so that was great. We got to hear from Jalen Milroe as well. So a lot of fun yesterday in the Naylor Stone Media Room. Getting to talk to Malachi Moore and Jalen Milroe and Nick Saban. Then I bounced over to the Sewell Thomas Stadium. Again, got to hear from new Alabama baseball coach Rob Vaughn. And then if you live in Tuscaloosa, the bottom dropped out. Big time rainstorm yesterday, midday. No big deal. We love the rain, but it did rain out the baseball viewing period. The guys didn't want to get out there and play in the rain, understandably so. Our friend Will Miller stuck around and saw them do a little bit of indoor work. And myself, I bounced over to Foster Auditorium and watched the women's basketball last part of their practice. They had a little bit of viewing period as well. We heard from Christy Curry. We heard from Loyal McQueen and Sarah Ashley Barker. So it was a huge day yesterday talking to Alabama athletics coaches and talking to many athletes on campus. You can watch all that on the BamaCentral YouTube channel. If you want to see any of those interviews or any of those discussions, they're over on the BamaCentral YouTube channel. So it was a great day yesterday, really getting rolling on Alabama women's and men's basketball. Their fall seasons, their season's getting kicked off in a little over a month. November 1st for the ladies against UAH, November 6th for the men against Morehead State. We're going to have a lot of fun with both basketball seasons coming up in just over a month. Baseball season is getting rolling. They had a scrimmage today. Don't know how it went. I'm sure it was a lot of fun for those guys to get back out onto Sewell Thomas Stadium, onto the field at Sewell Thomas Stadium. And so we had a lot of fun covering that. We will do a little fall ball coverage. I think their fall ball starts October 13th or so. So about 2 weeks or so from now, the guys will be playing the Auburn Tigers. But that kind of, sets us up. Make sure you check out all the coverage at BamaCentral.com for all those events, the press conferences that we were covering, the players' interviews as well, kind of setting up those seasons. But let's talk about Nick Saban. Let's talk about Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide football team right here on a Tuesday evening on the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral. And, of course, you can jump in and join us on the comments at any time at Joe Gaither6 on the Facebook side of things, on the YouTube side of things, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat as well. Send me your comments, questions, queries, and complaints. All right, Nick Saban yesterday in the Naylor Stone Media Room talking about Mississippi State, wrapping up the Ole Miss game and really getting things ready for the second week of SEC play. Nick Saban, really complimented his team. Really complimented his team for the second half of the Ole Miss game. Complimented Jalen Hale, complimented Elijah Pritchett, Terrence Ferguson, complimented Terry and Arnold. We talked a little about Deontay Lawson and his injury. It's going to seem like Deontay Lawson is going to miss this coming week's game. That's going to be my expectation. Now, Coach Saban did not inherently say that. He didn't say that in so many words, but it sounded like Deontay Lawson is not going to be available for the Crimson Tide this coming week at the inside linebacker position. And you're hopeful that he has a quick recovery with an ankle injury. Sounds like he sprained his ankle pretty badly, pretty nicely against Ole Miss. You guys all saw that. He was helped off the field and helped into the locker room against Ole Miss. So it seems like he's going to be missing this week's time. And Alabama's going to be turning to Jihad Campbell and Tresman Marshall to really take over the inside linebacker position. Tresman Marshall already getting a lot of play this year, and Jihad Campbell seeing significant action this past weekend in relief of Deontay Lawson. So it sounds like that's really going to be kind of the setup for this coming up week. He complimented Robbie Oates. He lamented obviously Mike Leach's untimely death over the offseason and how this will be the first year playing Mississippi State without Mike Leach on the sidelines. And then, it complimented Dallas Turner. It was kind of a mild press conference yesterday in the Naylor Stone media room with head coach Nick Saban. Mild press conference, but that's all right. It was fun. It was fun to be there. One thing that stood out to me from the press conference, and I want to bring it up to you guys, the listener, and maybe you'll jump in on the comments or leave me a note on any of the social media. Excuse me. Yeah, there we go. Nick Saban, as my microphone comes unplugged right there. Nick Saban said that this week's preparation and this week's game is going to be more challenging than the last 2 weeks' preparation and games. Obviously, Alabama takes on USF 2 weeks ago. And all right, easy, no big deal. Step up in competition from USF to Mississippi State. Fair, no big deal. But then he obviously Alabama played Ole Miss yesterday. Sorry, reading some messages and doing the show at the same time, having my brain work two different ways, and that's a lot of fun. That causes me to stutter sometimes. So you're taking on Ole Miss last week, and Nick Saban saying this week is a more difficult preparation. And I want to ask you guys, is it a more difficult preparation? Obviously, it's going to be challenging going on the road. Going on the road is one thing. It's first road SEC game. If you've been watching Alabama football for really the last 2 seasons, Alabama has really not done well on the road. It's really struggled on the road in true road games. And I guess the trend continued 2 weeks ago in Tampa, not really performing very well against USF. I think a lot of other variables go into play right there. But yeah, not really playing very well on the road has been a consistent theme for this football team for the last 2 years. So will that continue this coming up weekend on Saturday night in Starkville? Most of the time, Alabama has played Mississippi State mid to late November, or right there around late October, right around the time the LSU game. So it's a little bit earlier in the schedule, but traditionally, you go over to Starkville, and it has been a bit of a challenge. Now, the last couple of years, Alabama has really kicked Mississippi State in the rear end. No disrespect to you, Mike Leach, but Alabama has had a nice little plan for Mike Leach's offense. Now, things will be different this year. And so will Alabama be able to find itself on the road? Will Alabama be able to perform well on the road? Was Nick Saban's comment this week being a more difficult matchup and more difficult preparation than the last 2 weeks? Was it a veiled shot at Lane Kiffin? Lane Kiffin threw a lot of shots at Alabama and at Nick Saban, either through social media or at the press conference. Or was it Nick Saban just being the coach speak, giving the coach speak, giving the comments, obviously every week, the current week is the most difficult. Oh, this week is the most difficult preparation. Next week is the most difficult preparation, and so on and so on and so forth. Doesn't really matter. Nameless, faceless opponents. Was Nick Saban just giving the coach speak and just trying to talk to his players and his team that, hey, you know what? You beat Ole Miss last week. You had a great second half, and you probably figured out a lot of things. But don't buy into the rat poison. This week is the most difficult preparation on the schedule. Regardless of Texas being on the schedule 2-3 weeks ago, USF, obviously USF throw it out. Ole Miss, was it a veiled shot at Ole Miss and Texas, or was it Nick Saban trying to get his team to avoid eating any rat poison? And so I think it's more that trying to get the team to avoid any rat poison. And I kind of just think that, Coach Saban, he builds up every opponent. He builds up every opponent, whether it's USF, whether it was MTSU at the very beginning of the season, whether it was Texas or Ole Miss. He's going to continue to build up every single opponent. So no, I don't believe you, Coach. This isn't the most difficult preparation of the season. This isn't the most difficult preparation of the last 2 weeks. The Mississippi State offense is going to be a lot more wrinkled and variable than it has been the last couple of years under Mike Leach, the passing offense. But he says it's going to be more difficult from a physical standpoint. I don't know that I quite agree with that. But time will tell. Time will tell. Alabama going into the week, 14.5-point favorite right now. 14.5-point favorite on the road to Starkville. You guys know that I love my lines. You guys know that I love my gambling odds. So far, we're 3-1 against the spread when picking for or against Alabama. The only game that we missed was the MTSU game right off the bat. I took MTSU, I guess it was plus the 30 something, and Alabama beat the brakes off the Blue Raiders, unfortunately for the MTSU Blue Raiders. So we're 3-1 against the spread. I'm still unsure where I'm going to fall. 14.5 right now. I'm kind of leaning Mississippi State. Yeah, just kind of leaning Mississippi State with that 14.5. I do think that Alabama is going to take care of the Bulldogs and win the game. Now I reserve my right to kind of lock that in on Friday as we usually do. But I think that, Alabama, you got a little bit of a trap game feel here, because you beat a big-time opponent in Ole Miss. Ole Miss had already, gone on the road and beat Tulane, had beat Georgia Tech, and had really smoked Mercer. So they were coming into Tuscaloosa with a little bit of a high. Mississippi State, obviously, back-to-back losses, got really smoked by LSU and went over to South Carolina and played a close game. But I don't really think that South Carolina is that strong of an opponent. So Mississippi State's lost two SEC games in a row. Wonder how they're feeling. Is Alabama going to take it seriously? Alabama needs to take it seriously, or is Alabama going to be looking ahead down the road to a 2:30 matchup with Texas A&M next week at Texas A&M? I hope that Alabama is not going to fall into the trap of what could be a vicious trap game, because obviously there's nothing that Zach Arnett would like more in his first season leading the Bulldogs than to beat Alabama. So we'll see. We'll bring on some Mississippi State writer or pundit here in the next day or two to talk about the Bulldogs and give us some expertise on Mississippi State. But I feel very confident about Alabama winning on Saturday. I'm not quite sure how the performance is going to look. Obviously, the second half against Ole Miss gives you a lot of confidence, and you're hopeful that carries over into this coming up week and into Saturday. But on the road, you never really know what you're going to get. The last 2 years, Alabama has looked lackluster, has looked unfocused on the road in the SEC, and so you never know what you're going to get. Let's move to just a specific area of Alabama where I think you're seeing a lot of growth, a lot of change, a lot of encouraging signs. The Alabama defense, we've been talking on this program, has put together 4 really good games. 4 really good games. I guess you're going to have to throw out the fourth quarter against Texas. Against Texas, you give up 21 points against Texas in the fourth quarter. Not good defense there. But outside of that fourth quarter, you've put together really good defensive performances. Wrote a piece on BamaCentral today that the cornerstone of this defense so far, especially in the last 2 weeks where you've only given up 13 points, has been the pass rush. The pressure up front has really, really come on strong for the Alabama defense. Over the last 2 weeks, Alabama's defense has amassed 8 sacks and 9 quarterback hurries. As opposed to 2 sacks in the first 2 weeks, 2 sacks and 4 quarterback hurries in the first 2 weeks against MTSU and Texas. I think that you're really seeing Kevin Steele's footprints on this fingerprints on this defense. Whereas he got lit up against Texas a little bit. I think we talked a lot about Alabama not really bringing a lot of pressure against Texas. So look, you bring a lot of pressure. You got into a lot of pressure packages against Ole Miss and against USF. I think that this is something that Alabama can really lean on throughout the rest of the year. You've gotten 3 turnovers in the last couple of weeks. You've gotten 3 turnovers, a lot of tackles for a loss. You've been living in opponents' backfields. And what's allowed you to do this? One, it's been beautiful defensive scheme, bringing in a lot of pressure from the second level linebackers and secondary and nickel star players as well. But really, where you've seen a lot of a lot of strength and a lot of growth is on the edges. Chris Braswell and Dallas Turner have both really flipped a switch in the last couple of weeks, bringing lots of heat off the edge. Chris Braswell has had a great 4 weeks. Dallas Turner obviously didn't really do a whole lot against Texas or MTSU, but it seems like he has had a little switch flip. Dallas Turner being named the Bednarik Player of the Week this week, national recognition for his efforts. I think it's 5 tackles, 3.5 for a loss, 2 sacks, forced a fumble against Ole Miss. So he's been kind of that star player that you've been wanting to see. If you get Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell playing at a high level for really the next 10 games, is that what it is? 10 games will put you into the college football playoff. You get those 2 guys playing at a high level, it's really, really helpful to the secondary. They have to cover a whole lot less. It's really, really helpful to the defensive coordinator. You only have to bring pressure, light pressure, because you're getting good edge pressure. And really what you're getting good production out of Tim Keenan and Jaheim Otis. So you're getting really good individual production from the front 4, from the front 3, depending on whatever front the guys are in. And it's really, really been beneficial to the back end. You see Terrion Arnold and you see Kool-Aid McKinstry with blanket coverage, but these guys are having to cover a whole lot less due to good pressure up front. And Kool-Aid talked about it today. Basically, the confidence that it gives them knowing that the defense is getting good pressure on the quarterbacks. And so I really think that this is an area over the last 2 weeks, if you have been watching Alabama football, that's been on the rise. The front has just been more and more aggressive, has been winning individual matchups, has been playing gap sound football. Yeah, you've had a couple of runs. Ole Miss broke a couple of runs off. And South Florida broke a little bit of runs off with the quarterback run, scrambling around, not really any designed runs. But outside of a handful of runs, you've been locking down the opposition's running game, and you've been bringing a lot of heat to the quarterback position. Coach Saban on Monday talked about Dallas Turner, where it's like, it's not really all about the sacks. Yes, the sacks are nice. That's really nice. But it's about moving the quarterback, pressuring the quarterback. It's about moving him off the spot. You saw Tim Smith get on the sack sheet against Ole Miss because Chris Braswell crashed the edge, moved Jackson Dart off his spot, and Tim Keenan, Tim Smith got himself a sack. It's really about making the quarterback uncomfortable. And you're seeing that a lot over the last 2 weeks. And ideally, when you're playing Will Rogers this coming up week, I know it's not the same traditional all-out passing attack, passing on every down that you're going to be used to from Mississippi State. But Will Rogers, still a talented quarterback, still a good little quarterback. And I think that it's going to be very, very important for Chris Braswell and Dallas Turner to continue to bring pressure and move quarterbacks off their spot, make them uncomfortable, get them moving outside the pocket, throwing passes before they're ready to throw. And so I think that's going to be a real big, vital part of the Alabama defense going forward. Tomorrow on the show, I want to talk about Jalen Milroe's growth a little bit more. We got into it a little bit yesterday on the show as we broke down the Ole Miss win. If you missed any of the programs, you can check them out on YouTube, Facebook, on Twitter. You can check them out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon. You can check out my breakdown of the Ole Miss game right there at Joe Gaither 6 on the X machine, the Twitter machine, whatever you want to call it these days. I gave you 65 plays on the Ole Miss game, on the Ole Miss win right there there on Twitter Machine, and so you can check that out right there. Next week, the breakdown, I'll put the very beginning of the breakdown on Twitter, but the full breakdown will be on BamaCentral.com. We'll tease the very beginning of the breakdown, and then we'll break it all down on BamaCentral.com. Get the big old click for our website, the Sports Illustrated home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports, right there at BamaCentral.com. While you're at BamaCentral.com, I want to point you to my friend Katie Wyndham. Katie Wyndham is our lead writer, the senior writer for Bama Central. She gives me all kinds of advice and does great work. She got a one-on-one interview with Greg Byrne, athletic director Greg Byrne. She spoke to Greg Byrne on Friday of last week, and they talked for about 35 minutes about all things Alabama. And really, really interesting stuff. I wanted to point you to her article. It's very much just question and answer. And so you can read the full context of what Greg Byrne had to say about Darius Miles and the situation last year that Darius Miles and Brandon Miller and the Alabama basketball team found themselves in. You can read about Greg Byrne's reaction to Brad Bohannon and his gambling scandal, everything that Greg Byrne thought about that, the reaction to that. You can read about Greg Byrne's thoughts on the Alabama basketball program and the basketball gymnasium, hopeful the new basketball arena that you're looking forward to, maybe you're dreaming about. That's maybe probably never going to happen. Oh man! But you can read really an in-depth interview from Greg Byrne right there with our friend Katie Wyndham, and I encourage you guys to do that. Katie secured that interview and turned it around and got really great stuff out of Greg Byrne. They talked about the Pac-12 dissolving. If you don't know Greg Byrne's history in the Pac-12, he spent some time at Oregon or Oregon State, but definitely at Arizona. Spent some time at Arizona as well, so he is very familiar with those Pac-12 schools, and gave his thoughts on conference realignment, gave his thoughts on NIL, gave his thoughts on athletic facilities, all kinds of things Alabama athletics related, written right there at BamaCentral.com. And we appreciate Katie Wyndham for working hard and getting that great interview with athletic director Greg Byrne. Before we close out, we're only going to do a short episode because I am sleepy. You guys are sleepy. We're all ready to get ready for the rest of the week. Hump day tomorrow. You're going to have a great day tomorrow. You're going to be on the backside of the week, and you're going to be making plans to get over to Starkville. You need to make sure that you are drinking your coffee throughout the afternoons this week to prepare for an 8 p.m. kickoff. Golly, 8 p.m. kickoff. It's going to be gross, but we're all going to be staying awake and watching that. Hopefully Alabama can take care of business on Saturday, September 30th, and continue its redemption path to getting to Atlanta, winning the West, and getting into the college football playoff. We'll find out what the Mississippi State Bulldogs have for them on Saturday. Before we close out, I got two more topics for you. One basketball related and one baseball related. As we mentioned, we talked to Nate Oats yesterday. We talked to Nick Saban yesterday. We talked to Christy Curry yesterday, but we also talked to Rob Vaughn. Rob Vaughn, brand new Alabama baseball coach, met with the media about 15, 20 minutes and had nice things to say, had very, common things that you would hear to say, you would hope for him to say, really excited about this group of guys, really excited about this job, excited about getting to work, and, everything that nothing controversial, nothing juicy, nothing interesting really from Rob Vaughn yesterday. The only real topic that you guys maybe want to be, interested in, or that you might be interested in, as I learn how to speak right here live on the program on the Joe Gaither Show, can't use English, is Dylan Lonergan. Dylan Lonergan, freshman quarterback. Obviously, if you guys follow Dylan Lonergan's recruitment, there was a lot of talk about Dylan Lonergan being a premier pitcher, first baseman, field player, mostly a pitcher, and trying to play quarterback and pitching for the Alabama Crimson Tide baseball team. Rob Vaughn was asked about that yesterday. And Coach Vaughn basically said the plan is to see Dylan Lonergan in January, not July, in January just after the football season ends. The plan is to still get Dylan Nottingham over in January before spring practice and to kind of integrate him into the baseball program. But Rob Vaughn acknowledged that he's going to be deferring to head coach Nick Saban. He acknowledged that the football scholarship is what brought Dylan Nottingham to campus. I know Dylan Nottingham has had a lot of buzz over the last really 4 or 5 weeks while the quarterback competition's been going on. I did hear a lot of good things about Dylan Nottingham. I do believe that Alabama wants to redshirt him from a football standpoint. And so I would expect you won't see Dylan Nottingham get play. But Rob Vaughn acknowledging that, things can change over the next 4 months, 3 months or so until the end of the year. If Dylan Nottingham finds himself, knock on wood, if Jalen Milroe finds himself injured or just takes a dip or a terrible turn in his play, and, Ty Simpson, same sort of thing, Tyler Buckner, same sort of thing. If Dylan Nottingham gets an opportunity and takes advantage of it and becomes Alabama's starting quarterback, things will obviously change for Dylan Nottingham's baseball career. But Rob Vaughn acknowledging that the plan is to still have him join the baseball team in January and see how he fits in from a pitching standpoint, how he fits in from a player standpoint, whether he's going to, do spring football or whether he's going to be fully in on baseball. It sounds like Rob Vaughn is kind of being hands off with Dylan Nottingham right now, as Nottingham should be fully focused on football, and that's kind of that was really his approach and his answer. So there's a little update on Dylan Nottingham, freshman quarterback and, potential baseball team player, baseball team member for this coming up spring. I know a lot of people have been thinking about his baseball future. I think he was throwing low 90s in high school, so maybe, you never know. You never want to turn down a good arm when it comes to SEC baseball play, but that's kind of the latest update on Dylan Nottingham and the baseball program. The baseball program is going to be having some fall ball games starting October 13th. So basically two and a half weeks away from fall ball games. And you guys can get out there and watch them play Auburn. I think they're going to have a game with Mississippi State as well. Obviously, it doesn't count. It's just kind of an exhibition. But go support the baseball program this fall when they kick off fall ball. All right, last topic for the day is going to be basketball related. We already hit on Nick Saban's comments on Mississippi State. We hit on Alabama's sack production, the pressuring the quarterback production. Let's talk about Alabama basketball just real quick. Obviously, you didn't really see a whole lot yesterday at the open practice, at the viewing period. You can see some of those clips on the BamaCentral YouTube channel. Our man Blake Byler got there right on time. I was late. Oh, I don't like being late, but I was late, so I came in right at the very, very end. I didn't really see anything personally. Blake Byler was there. You can see his videos on BamaCentral.com. But huge news, both from a star standpoint and from a height standpoint. Alabama basketball lands 5-star Aiden Sherrill today, 2024 recruit. Mr. Aiden Sherrill, 6'10", 220 pounds. Aiden Sherrill getting committed to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Becomes the first 2024 recruit in the class. And maybe it won't be the last, for sure won't be the last. He might be bringing in a teammate, but Alabama brings in Aiden Sherrill, commits to the Alabama Crimson Tide, commits to Nate Oats, and he is he's the 5th highest rated recruit since they were rated recruits. He's the 5th highest rated commitment since they started rating commitments and rating recruits, behind Colin Sexton, Brandon Miller, J.D. Davison, and Richard Hendricks. You ever heard of those 4 guys? Yeah, I know you have. Colin Sexton, Brandon Miller, and J.D. Davison in the most recent, handful of years, Alabama basketball. Richard Hendricks in the early 2000s. Great players, great players wearing the crimson and white. And so you should be very, very excited about Aiden Sherrill. All right, 5-star forward center type. He's going to be an athletic forward center, 6'10", 220 pounds. Chose Alabama over Texas. Who else did we choose him over? Chose Alabama over Texas, Michigan State, Oklahoma, Ohio State. He came to Alabama on an official visit early September, and he was here last year as well. So he's been considering Alabama for a long, long time. We're hopeful that he's the first domino to fall. Look, Nate Oats, man. Look, I know everybody was disappointed how last season ended in the Sweet 16. I know the talent on last season's team was immense and really left everybody kind of feeling a little bit hollow driving back from Louisville, a little shell shock driving back from Louisville. But Nate Oats is just going to continue to build, continue to add, continue to bring in talent, and Aiden Sherrill is proof of that. Now, you're looking at this year's roster, Grant Nelson, you get a super transfer in Grant Nelson. You bring in Jaron Stevenson, reclassifies. You bring in a lot of guys in the transfer portal, Aaron Estrada, and to reload the roster. I think this year's basketball team is going to surprise a lot of people. You're looking at many preseason predictions. I've already had Alabama 7th, 8th in the SEC. That bleep ain't going to happen. Alabama's not going to be outside probably the top 3 in the SEC. They're going to surprise some people. And so, yeah, while you don't have the premier 5-star recruit in the, 5-star freshman, you brought in a lot of experience out of the transfer portal over the summer. And Nate Oats really, really trying to figure out what works, trying to figure out the best way to build a roster. We got to remember, Nate Oats is still a relatively young head coach at the college level, having just coached at Buffalo for a couple of years before coming to Alabama. Only a second college job. I'm about to sneeze, so excuse me, only a second college job. And so he's still learning. He's still learning. He's still growing in his own method. He's still growing in his own approach. And I think that his little shift to hit the transfer portal a little harder this year is beneficial. And you're going to see Alabama be very, very competitive on the hardwood. And Aiden Sherrill shows you that next year they're going to be just as competitive. No matter who you lose to the NBA draft or who you lose to the transfer portal, whatever your roster turnover looks like, you're going to continue to bring in high-level talent. So, Greg Byrne, please go put the shovel in the dirt for this arena. Go put the shovel in the dirt, raise the funds, whether it needs to be, corporately sponsored or whether it needs to, you need to adjust some funds from the Crimson Standard from one side or the other. I don't know the finances like that. You do, Greg Byrne. You know the hurdles that you're finding. Obviously, everybody's been talking about inflation. Well, buddy, inflation is not going to stop as long as the nation is spending money irresponsibly in certain areas. Then inflation is not going to go down. It's just something we're all going to have to get used to. And that's not, I don't really want to get political at all, but literally inflation is not going to stop. So Greg Byrne, you're the man, the myth, the legend. You're in charge of this whole big athletics ship. Go figure it out, and let's get this brand new arena built, because Nate Oats is not going to stop. He's not going to stop bringing in high level talent. Aiden Sherrill comes in. Let's see if I can get a full what's he's actually ranked. Aiden Sherrill from 24/7 Sports is ranked as the number 22 overall prospect in the class, the number 4 overall center in the class. Is out of prolific prep in California. As I said, he committed to Alabama over Michigan State, Ohio State, Texas, and Oklahoma. This man is going to be the real deal. 6'10", 220 pounds, and he's just the first domino in the new 2024 class. Now, I have kind of backed off on getting recruits onto the program as school kind of got restarted for these young men. Obviously, early August. I'll try to get Aiden Sherrill, see if he wants to jump on and join us, and see if we can get to know the newest recruit, the newest commit, and the only commit in the 2024 class. Now, he's friends with Darian Reed. Not friends, but teammates with Darian Reed. Darian Reed's coming for an official visit on October the 20th. He's a 6'8" forward, 4-star, 5-star, depends on where you look. And so we'll see if Aiden Sherrill can't become the next recruiter to build this 2024 class around Nate Oats and them boys bringing in some high-level talent. So really looking forward to seeing Nate Oats continue to build, continue to grow, and seeing what we can get excited about in Tuscaloosa around basketball. I know everybody loves football, and obviously it is football season. We're not going to steer too far away from the pigskin, but just between you and I'll let you know I am much crazier about Alabama basketball. Maybe it's because I'm much hungrier for success. I've seen 6 national titles in recent memory in football, so maybe I'm a little fat, a little happy, but I am starved for basketball success. And so, yes, I do hope that Nate Oats and company can continue to build, continue to grow, and all signs point to yes, as Aiden Sherrill, 5-star center out of prolific prep, becomes the first 2024 commit to the Crimson Tide, the 5th highest rated recruit in Alabama's history. Once again, behind Colin Sexton, Brandon Miller, J.D. Davison, and Richard Hendricks. So that's going to do it for the show today. I'm going to try to be on time tomorrow with a 1 p.m. kickoff. I'm going to try to go on time tomorrow with a 1 p.m. kickoff. I'm going to try to find a Mississippi State writer, somebody from the Mississippi State beat that can give us some expertise on Zach Arnett, on Will Rogers, on what they've done over the first 4 weeks. Obviously, disappointing to lose in such fashion to LSU. They go to South Carolina and give the Gamecocks a run for their money, but lose. They're 0-2 in the SEC. Are they going to be in the bottom of the SEC West by the time the standings are all done? Will that be Auburn? Will that be Arkansas? Those 3 teams kind of looking like the bottom end of the SEC West together. And it's going to be a huge week. The rest of the week's going to be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to doing it right here on the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com. You guys are watching us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Go tell a friend about the program. Share the program with a friend, an Alabama fan, an SEC fan, anybody that you think might enjoy the program or absolutely hate the program. We love our haters as well. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon. Subscribe, rate, review, hit that 5 stars, leave a comment, say this guy's a fool, and we'll have a lot of fun as we continue the rest of the week on the Joe Gaither Show right here on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.